Hello everyone, I'm Fantasticairy and welcome. I'm a watercolor artist here to share with you some process of my paintings. Before we get started, I just wanted to show you that I filled in some of the gaps in my sketchbook page from last week, continuing the theme of the grasses and the reference photos I took from when I visited Lethbridge at my friend's place. And then for the front page, I filled in the gaps around the skeleton with some leaf shapes and some more mushrooms. I started the other page, or the flipped over page. I was concerned about maybe the paper warping too much because of all the water, and I was also worried that it would show through on the other side. I took a gamble and it does not show through, so that's why it's a 60-page sketchbook front and back. So I can clarify that with this paper, it holds up pretty well. I kind of just continued the theme of the mushrooms. I didn't really have anything in mind. I just kind of wanted to paint loosely. They're not my best mushrooms, but it was still a lot of fun painting them. I painted them with my sister. I was showing her kind of how I tackled the mushrooms and whatnot, and I'll probably make that a future video. I ended up painting a little snail too. For reference photos, I use Pinterest a lot, but I'm starting to shift over to Unsplash because a lot of it is uncopyrighted and free to use for artists. I think my favorite part of this page is the bottom right scenery. It's got that watercolor stylistic look, which I love, kind of conceptual. You got the atmospheric background in the background, and in the foreground your elements are a little bit more defined, less blurry, more dark, like grasses. And I just love creating little scenes because when you look at them, say maybe a couple feet away, you can really, your eye kind of fills in the gaps in the story, so you don't need every single detail. And that's why I love conceptual looking scenery paintings, and they really make me feel satisfied when I look at them, and then when I've of course completed my own successfully. Other than maybe the sun's a little bit too intense, I think that throws the painting off, but I really was happy with that little painting. Little sceneries are one of my favorite things to paint, alongside mushrooms. And then for the next page, I kept the theme of scenery, and for the top right corner of the page, I used a couple references from the Unsplashed website. And then after I got the kind of colors down of what I was going for, I diverged from the reference and added in my own little elements to kind of make it my own, including the wet on wet technique with the sky. I didn't really bother with any clouds, and then the foreground elements, little rock faces or maybe smaller mountains, plateaus, and then in the foreground I added some cactuses with some flowers, making sure my foreground elements were a little bit more defined in the background. And then for the bottom left corner of the page, this is a reference from a picture I took when I was in Hanna, Alberta, visiting my sister. I don't feel like the painting did the picture justice, so I might give it another go, just because it was such a beautiful picture, the way the sky was meeting the snow of the prairies and the clouds, almost like a mirror, and I believe that we're close to sunset. And this painting doesn't really seem like it's close to sunset, so it's a little bit confusing what time of day it is in this painting, so I'll probably give that another go. But overall, I thought the composition and the colors worked out well, so I kept it. And of course the little cactus with the little flower, again using references off of Unsplashed. But yeah, that's what I've gotten up to in this last week, just filling in some more paintings, smaller paintings, which are very satisfying to do. And before we get on to the painting process for this video, I just wanted to quickly share with you the tools that I'll be using today. I'll be using the same palette today, the Winsor & Newton 24 set. I kind of crammed some more in there, so it's not really a 24 set anymore. And then I have my paintbrushes, my Princeton Aqua Elite series. From left to right, we have a number 1 round, a 1/4 inch angular shader, a number 2 round, a 0.5 round, and a 1 liner. I believe I used 3 of these brushes for this painting, which will be in the video during the process. Okay, so first we're gonna start off by wetting our paper just to make sure it's glistening and not soaked. I started off with a pink tone and then added in some blue to give the sky that pink purplish bluish color. Sometimes you get it during sunset, sometimes in the morning, and then a little bit of a darker blue for the horizon. And of course, making sure we're applying all these colors together so they blend well into the paper, the wet on wet technique. For this painting, I used my 1/4 inch angular shader. I really love the flat brushes for creating little scenes. You can create really cool, interesting geometric shapes. Next to our angular shader is the number 2 round brush. This brush is my go-to. I use it for all my paintings. So here I am blocking in the bottom portion of the painting with my flat shader brush. I'm kind of letting the painting just kind of flow, and then the paint dries up on the brush. I used that advantage to kind of create these little lines in the painting, adding some texture. For this painting, I did use a couple references for color and just for an idea of composition in the direction I wanted to go. I've been really enjoying making desert scenes, especially the look of the Nevada desert, the red sand. I think it's really cool. And then I take my 2 brush with a little bit more water, adding in some mossy, bushy looking plants, just kind of insinuating that they're there. They're not super detailed, adding more of a saturated look in the front of the painting. Now I kind of just wanted to sketch in a little above these mountain shapes. I saw this reference of some roundish mountains and I thought that would be cool to try out. For the most part, this composition seems to be very flat, but you just kind of have to trust the process and keep going, and once you get to the end where you can detail, it really brings the whole painting together. So don't give up. Don't give up too early. Now that I got my mountains kind of shaped in, I add some green. I noticed that some of those round mountains still had trees going all the way up to the top. They're not your typical mountains where, say, the Rockies or Mount Everest, where trees stop growing at a certain point. These ones aren't as high as those mountains, so the trees still grow way up to the top. Of course, I'm going to add in some darker shaded areas just to give sense that there is some kind of light hitting the mountain faces. Now that I got the mountains blocked in, I'm going to come in with my, I think it's 0.5 round Princeton brush, or I guess it would just be 0.5 round. It's really small, the smallest one I could find for tiny little details. I picked it up just for fun, but I've actually been using it quite a bit for these tiny paintings. Taking this tiny little brush, and now I am carving into the mountains these little tree veins climbing up the mountain. So I hope I was able to convey that properly. I also took advantage of the tiny brush and added in some more darker shading to the mountains. And now I'm starting to define more of the details in the foreground, getting them a little bit more saturated, a little bit more dark to help tease the eye of atmospheric perspective. Sticking to my color palette of more brownish tone for the greens. Adding in some darker leaves just for a touch. They could also be like succulents or tiny things. Tiny cactuses, sorry. And here I am using that tiny little brush to just add even a little bit more detail. I'm not sure if this actually helped the painting, but I mean, I feel it did. It was more fun to actually just dab away at these little tiny bushes. So here I am painting in some yellow. I just wanted to give the painting more of a warmth kind of glow from a sun. And now I'm adding in a tiny little planet. The sky felt a little empty to me, so I wanted to give it an interesting feature, and I felt that this little planet was a good fit. I'm definitely going to continue doing little planets in future paintings. So cute. Adding in the rings was a little nerve-wracking. I should have been using that tiny little brush, but I think this is a good display to show you that even this number 2 brush can get those really fine details if you're super careful with your hand. And of course, this little planet needs a little moon. And now I'll be switching over to my number 1 liner because I wanted to paint in a little bit of grass for the foreground, just to add to that perspective. From this point on, I'm going to let you enjoy the rest of the video with some music, and I'll see you at the end for the final review. and we made it to the end. It's really worth it to trust the process and don't give up too early if you're doing paintings, even if you're not feeling it, because sometimes the end result will surprise you. I myself am guilty of not trusting the process and giving up too early on so many paintings in the past, but this one I'm glad that I stuck it through. The tiny little planet and the tiny little moon added so much fun and joy to this painting for me, because for all we know, this could be a whole other planet than Earth. So in a way, it does add a little bit of story. I feel like adding in the grass was a good idea in the end. At first I was a little bit nervous about it just because I didn't want it to take away from the painting, but I feel like having these little plants in the foreground helps establish the perspective a little bit more, because now that I'm looking at it, the mountains did kind of fade away a little bit too much. I feel like I could have defined the mid-ground maybe a little bit more, because it kind of looks like it blends into the background, but that's okay. Lesson learned. Another random thing about this painting, when you don't use masking tape, you can shape the composition or frame the composition of the scenery painting. Like that little top right corner, how the water is spilling out onto the paper is kind of unique, and I do like that. Of course, and also the overlap of the grasses out of the frame. It gives the painting a little bit more style, more personality. I really enjoyed making this video. I love painting little scenes or tiny places. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well. And if you did, please like and subscribe. Videos are every Friday. If you're interested, you can purchase this little tiny scenery on my imprint shop, link in the description below. And thank you for sticking to the end. Comment below what was your favorite part of this painting, what you think of this painting, and also if you've ever tried doing any tiny little scenes. And if you do try, please comment below and share with me how you enjoyed the process. Alright everyone, that's about it for this video. I'll see you next Friday. Bye bye.